Hey everyone, quick interruption before the pod. I had to make some last minute changes, so I wasn't able to make an intro and I didn't want to hold things up. Before we jump into this one, I have some exciting things coming up within the next few weeks. We got more tattoo artists, we got bodybuilders, and possibly a world-renowned poker player. Be sure to stay locked in so you don't miss an episode. As always, thanks for your support. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's get into the pod. Welcome back to the most versatile podcast in the world, where we unapologetically dip into the minds of those relentless enough to pursue mastery. I am with a local artist here in Charlotte named Princeton. He has been on MTV Fresh Out. He's also been on Tengo Talento Mucho Talento. I speak Spanish, but I like doing it with a different accent. So he's going to go ahead and introduce himself. He's from Charlotte, and here he is.
Hey, what's up? I'm Princeton, singer-songwriter, artist, producer, many talents. Definitely want to become an author at some point, so definitely into the creative curation space and artist of influence. So, yeah, that's me.
So how long have you been making music?
I started when I was 17, so I've been going about 11, 12 years. And, back when I was in high school.
What was your initial start to become an artist?
By the time I was like 10, 11, 12, my dad got me listening to, I knew like most of the discography of Michael Jackson, Prince, Earth, Wind and Fire, The Temptations, Elvis Presley, The Beatles. So back when I was like 11 or 12, I was like loving like performing in front of like a mirror, in front of my family, just like, going over songs. And I get into songwriting. There's an artist named Little Richard. He's a guy from the 50s. He made like these 2.5 minute songs. And I would like rewrite the lyrics as like a kid, like 11, 12-year-old kid, just rewrite the lyrics to some of his songs. And actually, I went to Memphis, Tennessee. And I visited Graceland, which is like the home of Elvis, and they had Sun Studios where a lot of those artists, those rockabilly artists, performed at. Elvis Presley, Sam Perkins, Carl Perkins, to name a few. And I ended up performing. I actually got to record on the mic that they, recorded. I got to record a couple songs at that studio. I was 11 at the time. It was like Great Balls of Fire and Tutti Frutti. So Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis and Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. And those are my first times that I've ever got to record like on a microphone.
And how old are you?
I was 11 at the time.
That's crazy. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it was like $30 to record 2 songs. So
cheap.
Cheap. I mean, it's like 2007 probably. So I just got to record, and I just like being in the booth and I just expressing myself through music. So that's kind of how I got my start.
So when you first started, what were your thoughts on trying to make it, or were you just hoping that you could make it?
I think, I don't know. I feel like I fell upon it for like the right reasons. So when I was in high school, I ended up like being like 14 or 15. I really like rap music, but I didn't want to like, tell my parents like, that their academically gifted son, it wants to be a rapper. So I think for a couple years there, I just kind of pushed it to the bay. And then when I was like 16 or 17, I was a junior and senior high school, I was like, man, I really actually want to do this. And I gave myself the name Princeton and just started taking it seriously. But I didn't have any connections. Like I grew up like a little town right outside Charlotte. So, I mean, I came to Charlotte every day, but I didn't know necessarily the moves to make in order to, be on a platform or, put myself out there. So it definitely was a lot of struggle of like trying to figure out like who do I know that could help me get to that next platform. So
you just paved your way by making different connections in the scene since you first started in high school.
I would say I just focused mainly like on like writing and like actually getting my craft down, because I thought it was I had somebody tell me like the age old, like, when a high school athlete gets like recruited by colleges, like if you're good, they'll find you.
Right.
So I always was under that impression, so I was very big on early on, like making sure that like my flow, cadence, writing, everything, like, getting the craft down was good. And not really focusing on the networking aspect, the performance aspect. So I was definitely like, I feel like I was behind in that aspect because I didn't realize at the time. But then I ended up coming to find out, like, actually, you got to put yourself out there a shit ton in order to like be known to people.
Right. Yeah, the more hands you shake, the more money you make.
Yep.
So I've heard from other producers and artists that Charlotte doesn't necessarily have a good music scene out here. So how would you stand out from something that doesn't even exist?
That's a good question. A lot of it, I mean, and you mentioned that in the beginning, your beginning bio about me. I had to go elsewhere. I had to go to Los Angeles to be on a Latin Mexican talent show. I had to go to New York City in order to, like, you know, be spotted on MTV. So it takes a lot of outside appearances, because I feel like once I got a little bit of buzz on the outside, it helped a lot in Charlotte. Because you're right, there are people that have the right means and the mindset to go about it. They just haven't had the platform to do so. So like somebody like DaBaby, he managed to, you know, put himself on a bigger platform, but a lot of his grassroots effort did come in Charlotte. So I think it's a lot to build upon, but you definitely need to go outside of the city and major spots in order to, you know, get that type of placement, to get that type of clout.
Right. So when you were on the Talento show and the MTV's Fresh Out, was it more for bragging rights, or did it actually open some doors for you?
I wish it would have opened a lot more doors. With the Tengo Talento, it definitely opened. I think it just kind of like peeped people like in, you know, that I interacted with, or people in Charlotte that like, oh, he actually is like doing something like with the music. He's actually making a great move, and I think that's something that I didn't expect early on, because I didn't think a lot of people took me seriously, and I think a lot of artists that come out of Charlotte, like, they don't get taken seriously, because it's like, you know, you're doing it for a small pond, you know,
right,
instead of a big pond. So I feel like that's kind of how with MTV, I think that's what really got people perked up. Like, oh, he's actually like, he's out there, like he's actually in Times Square, like performing in front of like a major audience. And I think that's where people got really perked up. The people that I know in my circles and things of that nature. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I also did see in your bio that you opened up for Riff Raff in 2021.
Yep.
Was that something that you just wanted to do as I'm just happy to be here, or was that for bragging rights?
I wouldn't even say bragging rights. I mean, it's just, you know,
talk a little bit more into that.
I'm thinking more in terms of like, you know, building the brand, building artistry. I'm someone that takes like a live performance very seriously. And for a number of years, since like 2017, I dropped my first project. I wanted to open up for major artists, and I was emailing every single artist that I felt like I could open up for. I emailed their team or somebody on their team, and sometimes I would get replies back, sorry, we can't do it, or like I wouldn't get anything back at all. So I felt like I've always wanted to open up for artists. I just never was able to figure out who to go to or build a connection with some of these artist managers. And then Riff Raff came about because somebody that I had worked for at the time was actually organizing this event. He was a fellow artist himself, and he organized the Riff Raff concert. And I just used my connection to him and asked him, hey, you think I could bring a certain amount of people? You think I could open up? And he ended up giving me the spot.
Where was that at?
It was at Unknown Brewery, which is right next to Slingshot. It's not called Unknown Brewery anymore. I don't know what it's called now, but it's right next to Slingshot in South End. So, yeah, that ended up being like, I ended up getting 12 minutes, but you could ask my friend Eskimo over there. I think I killed that thing just because I had a DJ that like was to my set. He had like certain cues, like on certain like mic drops and things of that nature, and it just like everything that I planned for went exactly how I wanted to. Like I really wanted to make sure. Like I think 12 minutes was good. I did like 4 or 5 songs. And that was a good point where I performed, and then I got off the stage like good enough to where people were like, "Oh, damn, we kind of wanted." You know, I didn't overextend my stay on the stage.
So it was only 12 minutes, no more.
I mean, it was 12 minutes. I probably did like 14 or 15 because he wasn't like timing me. But I was like, you know, I talked in between songs. The song time ran for 12 minutes, but I was talking in between songs and kind of like propping up the next song to other people. I like when I perform, like saying like, "Hey guys, this song's called this right here." Like I got a little dancer with it, or like, you know, these 2 words that I want you guys to say like right here. So I definitely try to like get the crowd interactive and be participative.
Yeah, engagement is something good. When you could have people engage with what you're doing, then that's how you build a real fan base. Mm-hmm. What do your parents think about your music endeavors?
Whew. I think at this point they're fine with it. I think back when I was like 17, man, I was like it was like the worst thing, you know, like how you think when whatever you do, and if your parents find out, you know, on any little thing, like you think it's the end of the world. That's how I went about it. Like I was like so secretive, like that I was like making sure like they didn't have any like they couldn't find like a SoundCloud link, because I was just posting on SoundCloud at that time, and I think YouTube, and I was just like, and I just remember I remember my mom had it on her laptop one day and on SoundCloud, and I was just like, I felt like my whole world was about to crash, and it was literally like, and then they listened to it, and the song actually was called Legendary. That was the first song I ever like put out on SoundCloud. It's called Legendary. And it was a good song. It wasn't talking about no like, you know, throwing ass or, you know, fucking bitches type shit. So I thought it was a good song. And then they just like, they're like, oh, so you're doing this? And I was like, yeah, I guess, you know, I was like 18 at the time. I was like, oh, you know, yeah, I want to. And then they're like, okay. So I thought they were going to like lay out into me more of like, oh, you shouldn't do this. This is not like a viable option. But they kind of
most parents.
Yeah. I think the only sentiment that they gave was like, well, you know, you should focus on, because I was at college at the time. They're like, oh, well, you need to just keep focusing on college and getting a job after college. So I was like, okay.
So you dropped out of college to pursue music full time?
No. I went to UNC Charlotte, so I stayed in college at the time, and I put my first project out, my first major album, when I was 21, so my senior year in college.
So what are you doing now? Are you just pursuing music full time, or are you just doing things currently to get by?
I actually have a marketing job, so I do marketing for a metal supply company. So that's kind of how I'm able to get some money in and be able
to fund it.
Yeah, to be able to fund it, because I mean, I'm sure you've heard from people that do music. You know, it's definitely, you know, if you're not one of the top artists, you know, it's tough. You know, trying to make money, whether it's streaming or brand deals, or, you know, there's a lot of money that you could make, but you're trying to figure out how to make it.
Right. So why is there a stigma with rappers always talking about money that they don't have?
I mean, because everyone's like trying to flex as a rapper, man. You know, everyone's trying to, even if they don't have it. I mean, that braggadocio, which, you know, obviously it doesn't make sense. You're right. It's ironic, right? Because it should make sense that, like, yeah, you had, like, I'm sure you've gotten haggled by like rappers or
all
whoever.
the time. I don't work with rappers.
Yeah. Probably for that reason. Yeah. Then they try to, but then they're on Instagram Live, like, you know, flexing like a chain or something like that. It doesn't make any sense. They're using money for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
And but that's how the culture has got them, you know.
Yeah, because I always see a lot of rappers, they'll post stacks, they'll post a bunch of money, they'll post change, they'll post jewelry, and then they'll hit me up to do a music video or whatever, and I'll tell them my minimum, and they just basically ghost me when it's time to pay up. I don't know.
It's a facade. No, I mean, you're right, man. It's a facade that a lot of people try to keep up, man.
So
how much they ain't got it.
So how much of your brand is substantial and not just an image?
Oh, man, you are asking tough questions. I would say a lot of it, because I feel like a lot of the material, the lyrical material, I just try to be myself, you know, like, you know, I like traveling. I like, you know, having relationships with different types of girls, you know, that's a lot of stuff that I talk about in my music. I have like a lot of existential stuff that I try to incorporate in my music, a lot of just, you know, non-pretentious, you know, more meaningful stuff that, you know, relationships with my family, relationships with my grandparents, relationships with my parents, you know, struggles in everyday life that I go through. I tried to not, you know, cast an image, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, that is what speaks to people that, you know, have my type of background. I'm not trying to go after an audience that, you know, I'm trying to gain that I don't resonate with.
I like that. What did you say? You cast what did you say? You said I cast an image, or what you said something. I like that.
Cast a net, I guess.
You said, yeah, I actually really resonate with that, because you don't really like to put on the facade that most of these people like to do, because everything on social media is a lie nowadays. So yeah, you know, a lot of people just like to front and flex and do all this stuff, but then in reality they're broke.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a different type of ballgame too. I mean, I feel like for me, it's definitely helped just being able to like gain like a sense of emotional intelligence and like try to vibrate higher. So I feel like when you're vibrating low, you know, you're all about like trying to fuck somebody else's bitch, or like, you know, I mean these are all things, you know, like trying to get one up on people, you know, trying to, you know, take advantage of situations, be a snake, be sneaky, you know, when you're vibrating low. You know, I'm not trying to get on some like chakra line thing, but I feel like whenever the energy that you're putting out is very like low frequency, you know, you're fucking with like girls that like, you know, ain't got shit going on for me. You're fucking with dudes, you know.
I like bro girls.
Well, I know what I'm saying. Like, if people aren't providing any sort of like value to your life, in
No,
a
yeah, no, I know
positive
what you
way,
mean. I know what you mean.
I think that's
Just trying to get a one
I think
up.
that's where that culture can just be like a cycle, you know, like a hamster wheel, where they just like keep trying to like who's trying to outshow who's trying to one up who's trying to outflex who. You know, it
Right.
definitely doesn't. Like no one's winning at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed that here in Charlotte. Well, I don't know. I think it's common in a lot of just big cities, but I noticed that a lot of the music people, they don't really like to collab with each other. I mean, it's the same with like cameras. Nobody wants to like work with me, which is cool. But I don't understand why that they don't. So why do you think music people in the industry don't really like to work with each other in a small city like Charlotte?
I don't know. I think I'm trying to think from my perspective, because, you know, I think there's people that I want to work with, you know, that I feel like on my level. So, you know, I reach out to them, and then maybe they don't think that quite, you know, I'm on their level. So maybe that's why they don't want to work with me, and vice versa. Maybe people have like different hierarchies in their mind where they don't want to, you know, because I think sometimes people want like a swap for a swap. You know, I do this for you, you do this for me.
I scratch your back.
And, yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, sometimes, you know, I have other artists hitting me up, you know, that I don't think are on my level, and they want, you know, me to hop on their song. And I just like, man, like, you know, I appreciate like either like, you know, you would have to pay me, or like, you know, I don't mind listening, giving you feedback, but like I wouldn't want to take what I know and my expertise, like hopping on tracks to like, you know, just do it because I feel like we're not at the same level, you know.
So,
and
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I mean, I feel like that's like, you know, maybe some sort of people have like blockades or, you know, blockages that stop them from wanting to collaborate because maybe they don't deem that other person as worthy, or that other person doesn't deem them as worthy. So I mean,
You just pulled the question right out of my
Okay.
out of my mouth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, who do you deem worthy enough to work with you?
I mean, I think it's somebody. I mean, I guess I'm not. Yeah, wouldn't say any names, but I think so. I feel like you know, like you said about social media can kind of be a lie, but for me, I think it can be a tool where I see other people that are just like kind of working. Like you're an example of somebody that's like has motion, that it's working, that's putting things into place, that has connections that's set up in order to like make things. And I think, you know, you have standalone effect. That's what I like to call. I'm just calling it right now. Where like, you know, you have your own stuff going on, no matter if like every other person that you work with is like, you know, taken from you. You are
Right.
able to like provide, you know, value by yourself to, you know, an audience.
So, and that's where
I
you're
think
at.
that-
You have your own motion. You have your own connections. So
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
really need the help, but you want the help.
No, I want the help for sure. I'll name drop this guy that's, you know, taking behind the scenes, Neskimo. He's like my head engineer, you know, somebody that I like working like hand in hand with, that's like really like knows the nitty gritty when it comes to like making my music, like, you know, sound the way that I want it to sound.
So he's worthy.
He's worthy. Yeah. But I think it's like, you know, but you know, how our relationship came, you know, this man had a studio, and I met him, I was probably like 6 or 7 years in. So I already had like a good bit of catalog. So I think that's kind of like, you know, you don't have to be making music per se, like the same amount of time I am, but it would be nice if you already have songs going on, or you know how to make, you know, music content. I think those are the type of things that I do. So it would be like cool to see like other artists that I would like to work with that are also like, oh, like there's a guy that his name, he goes by Eastside Brother. He's actually an artist from Charlotte, and he's doing the same thing with me. And he's hitting me up. He's like, yeah, he's like, yo, bro, I see you doing like, you know, you're the only one that really wants this shit, man. Like we gotta like, I was like, hell yeah, man. Just cause like, you know, I can peep him on Instagram. I can see him putting out content. I can see him always working on new tracks. I think that's kind of, you know, that's where it lies for me, is if somebody's like, if I feel like somebody's doing the same amount of work that I'm doing, then like, oh, let's collab. And sometimes like I want to work with bigger artists, but you know, they probably don't deem like I'm in their position.
It's just a DM away. I mean, you never know.
You're right,
You
you're
can
right.
just DM them. They might reply.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's worked for me sometimes. Like I'll DM someone and they'll just like a shot in the dark.
But what kind of, because I think that's something that I've had to learn too, is like, you know, as an artist, you're always like, hey, can you listen to my stuff? Can you help me out? Can you help? Like, it's all about me. And it's like, I've had to learn, like, what value can I provide to that other person that's going to help me out?
Yeah, whenever people do that to me, like at gas stations, I just tell them no, because it's like, I don't want to listen to your stuff, bro. I'd rather just like,
yo, bump my mixtape.
You know, like, yeah, you know, people do that in Vegas. People do that here in Charlotte. It's like, here, bump my mixtape. It's like, bro, like, no.
Yeah.
You know, like, I get it. I know the struggle, because I used to have to like do I would never really have to go in the street and be like to random people.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
But
You
it's
have
just,
it like set up. But I mean, how do you go about like providing value on someone that you deem is like, you know, a step ahead of you, or where you want to be at?
Well, I don't believe anyone's a step ahead of me in the film world, to be honest.
Okay.
And
Okay.
people can talk all they want, but the amount of knowledge and experience that I have, I can literally just talk to someone and ask them a question. And if they don't know an answer to what I'm asking, then I could just kind of tell. But I'll work with anybody. I'm always willing to learn as long as someone else is willing to learn, because I don't know everything. I just know what I know and know what I've learned, and like the hands-on. I've put like thousands of hours. At least 10,000 hours into my craft.
Then you want to work with someone that you know is like also going to be willing to.
Right. I want to work with someone who wants the same thing that I want. Like a lot of people in Charlotte, there's like, oh, well, you got to pay me. I'm like, bro, like you're using my stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it just doesn't make any sense. I have people like for this. If I had someone like try to come help me set this up, they would like want to charge me. And I'm just like, bro, it's my stuff. Like I get it. Like I'll feed you and stuff, but it's like, so let's get it up.
Like they're taking use of your resources.
Right. And it's once I'm bigger, because this podcast obviously isn't generating revenue. Mm-hmm. So when I get it to generate revenue, then I'll obviously pay my people. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, I'm doing it for fun. I do it because I love this stuff. I like hearing people's stories. So I like artists. I'm an artist. And I just want to get people to talk about their passion, like how you are, and other people that I've interviewed. So that's kind of like where I'm at with like people. I want them to be passionate about it. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense.
When you were coming up, posting on your social media, what's the most embarrassing thing you've done for clout?
Whew. Okay. Yeah, actually, that one came to mind. What's that song? Okay, Justin Bieber had an album like Journals. You know the project Journals?
I think so.
He had a song called Confident. Oh no, she's confident. All right, so this is a song he had Chance the Rapper. It's like 2014. So it's like I remember I was trying to have some crazy. I was trying to do like 4 songs within like a month. So like a song a week, but it was like remixes. And so I think I put out like Who Do You Love by YG and Drake. I did a remix of that, and I was like, okay, that went well. And then I did a remix to Confident by Justin Bieber. The thing was, back then I couldn't sing. I'm not even a great singer. I'm probably a better rapper than I am singer. But 10 years later, I definitely have I know my role in the singing voice. So 10 years ago, I didn't know how to sing. And the guy that was probably recording me probably didn't know how to like auto-tune me correctly. So I did a whole video where I went to like my elementary school playground and I did like a crazy dance, like, trying to do like on some like pop star shit when I was trying to be a rapper. And it didn't sound good, man. And I just remember people like, I was posting about it and people would just give me like the laughing emojis, like random people. And I was just like, funny. I was like, oh shit, man. But it got like 1,500 views within like a week. It was like one of back on in YouTube. And I was like, oh, that's pretty. And that was just like, I didn't know anything about YouTube advertising. That was just me posting about it like on Instagram and Twitter. And then, the YouTube also having like an algorithm in the works. But I did it's unlisted right now, so I have it still there, but I don't have it for public viewing.
No, I feel you. I have an unlisted video that I did for clout too. So
no, that was something that I was just trying. I was trying something to do, but I wasn't that great in my singing voice. So I think it turned out not to be something that I was proud of.
So after you realized that you weren't good at singing, did you take lessons?
Actually, yeah, I took 3 months worth of lessons. I went to a lady that was like. She was like a one-hit wonder back in like the 80s. It's like a rock. And I was trying to show her like some of my songs, and like she just gave me like basic tips. She didn't really like help based on like the type of sound that I was going for. So I just did 3 months. But other than that, I did like singing exercises. I think I got into just like understanding like, how my voice can like sound like smooth. And I think that came with just like recording more music, honestly, and like just getting better sound and better knowing like different pitches to hit and things like that. That's kind of just over the years. I think now I'm able to have like a good singing voice. I mean, you heard Docs like singing my shit, before we got on the pod. So
no, that's cool. And that's cool that you took the music lessons, even if it was just for a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you know about music theory?
I think that's probably one of the best things that I'm blind about that kind of stuff, because all I've known, like I mentioned before, is like just listening to like the greatest hits of like some of the biggest artists from like the 50s, 60s, 70s. That's kind of like my whole education when it came to music. I think that's probably why like I'm a pop rap artist. So I say like I'm very big on the melody and like singing melodies, because I feel like all that stuff that I learned, all the music that I listened to as a kid is like just channeling. But in terms of music theory, like I don't know like technical stuff. I don't know like certain like terminology. And yeah.
So you don't know what tone we are talking. Like you don't know like the tones. Like you don't know A B C D.
No. I mean, I could like, I could do like a do re mi, but in terms of just like, like if you're like, if like a pitch, like somebody like
you don't have
something,
perfect pitch.
No, none of that.
So if I were to play a note like on a guitar, you wouldn't know what chord.
No. I think a lot of it I feel like is where I come with like lyricism and writing. So I don't come from like that, that aspect that you mentioned with like note playing or, sounds. I'm more of like the writing and then making that writing and putting and transmuting that into actual music and melody and songwriting.
So everything you do is written?
Now I would say probably like 80-90%, because the last 10 to 20, if I'm in the studio, I like it being I like having a structure like with the song. Like if I'm going to the studio to record a song and then make that last 10 to 20% like be like something that's like free flowing for me, or feeling based on the vibe. But definitely, I think writing is better for me as opposed to freestyling.
Everybody freestyles nowadays.
Yeah. I feel like Kanye West is probably a great example of that. Someone that like his first albums, like you could tell like, oh, these were actually well written, and then now I feel like he's just hopping on the mic and freestyling.
I like Kanye West.
Yeah. No, I love Kanye West. I just think that the level of his writing has gone down substantially, because I think now he's just freestyling. And maybe like he's freestyling and then he's kind of getting it down, and then he's going to record another take, and then he's like, all right, that's it. But I feel like his first albums, like his first like 4 or 5 albums, he just like took the time, like every line was like, beautifully written. And I feel like now he's just kind of more like, just to get it done, I mean, he can be in that position, he's Kanye West.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. He's phenomenal.
Yeah. The production's still fire, so.
Who's your favorite pop artist current? And we're 2025 now.
Probably the past couple of years, Don Toliver. I think. Would you say? I mean, yeah, he's.
I only listen
pop
to
rap.
I only listen to Drake.
Okay. I mean, yeah. My 2 favorite artists all time, Drake and Kanye. Those are the ones that got me into like making hip hop.
They had beef.
They have beef. Yeah, it's tough watching that. But they both. I think I used to like idolize them, but I think seeing them over the years, they both have their faults, and I think I try not to idolize anyone at this point.
Yeah, I don't think idolizing anyone is good.
like the whole celebrity and that whole aspect.
Yeah, it's a worship. Artistry. Technically, you don't want to worship anybody.
Yeah. Because I mean, these people are people at the end of the day. No matter how much you love their music, how much I think for those guys, I identified with them so much that I think that was like, oh, these are basically like people like me. Like, oh, they thought like me, and then it turns out they have their faults, and you just can't. I mean, you can respect what they do, but like you said, you can't go around worshiping them, idolizing them.
So what makes you think you can make your mark in the music industry?
I think basically like I feel like just a story that I have to tell. I don't think my story is any different from somebody per se, but I guess I'll explain it like so I'm like mixed. So my dad's white and my mom's Peruvian. My mom is from one of the biggest cities in the world, Lima, Peru. Mm-hmm. And then my dad's from like a country town in North Carolina. So I think for a lot of my life, I've had to, feel like you have like a double identity, because, some people don't consider you this or don't consider you that. You're not white enough. You're not Hispanic enough. So I feel like when it comes to like me as an American artist, I feel like, I have a unique place in the game where like, Drake fell into this, where he wasn't black enough, sometimes.
I was literally just thinking of that bar.
Yeah, like the, Pusha T, kind of got him on that. So, it's like you kind of really don't belong. And I think, but there's a lot of kids like that, that, whether they're mixed or any sort of demographic, that they feel like, they don't really belong. I feel like in school, like I was cool with people, but I wasn't like, I didn't have like super like close friends, because I didn't know where I belonged. Like I was a little athletic. I was also like academic, so I really didn't like fit like a nerd or jock like type of vibe. I was kind of like in between. So I've always felt like I can identify with different people, and kind of be a bridge and a gap to different types of walks of life. So I feel like that's something that I just try to put in through my music. I want it to be. A lot of it, my music is like heartbreak, introspection, but then also like, I like going to the club, I like risen up girls, I definitely like, I can fall into that trap of, that, you know, being pretentious.
That's
you know?
everybody's downfall is women.
Yep. And, you know, you can definitely, and, you know, I definitely feed into, you know, I've definitely fed into my ego too. So, you know, I'm no better than anybody else. And I think, but that's why I love some of my favorite artists too, because like they have that introspection, but then you can also see them getting caught up in just, you know, bullshit, you know. And I think, you know, but that's what makes them human too, because at the end of the day, you know, we all, you know, can be victims to our vices or victims to, you know, the world around us.
Well, developing an ego is not a bad thing as long as you can back it up.
No, yeah, it can move mountains for you. It really can.
Mm-hmm. So how would you rank yourself amongst the Charlotte community as far as musical artists?
In terms of hierarchy, I'm definitely not on the top rank, but I think I'm chipping away at it. I think in terms of my catalog, in terms of my artistry, I think in terms of, we just talking music, I mean, I definitely put myself like up there, you know, maybe not with the mainstream artists, maybe not with if they're signed to a label artist, but I mean, as far as any other independent artist, like I definitely don't mind like going toe to toe with anyone, you know, whether that's competition or just whether that's like straight up objective music, you know, because people can be subjective on this stuff, but like objectively, like you just gotta listen to my songs, man. You can, I mean, there's reasons, like I think, you know, for the most part, like, you know, I feel like I definitely am grateful and blessed and lucky to have like certain spots. But then at the same time, you know, when you get those certain spots, you're like, well, actually, that kind of stuff, you know, happened because, you know, I've been making music for like 5, 6, 7 years. I was able to get that spot on Tengo Talento. Like, I had music videos that I got to show Tengo Talento that they were like, okay, you know, this guy's legit, you know. And I think, you know, if I didn't put in that base work, if I would have just like not been consistent with it, then like those opportunities wouldn't come about.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And I feel like that's kind of like where it comes, like where it's like at the end of the day, if I can put out music and I can put out content, like, you know, I'm going to put my best foot forward. And I believe, you know, if you and I like went about it, like, you know, we studied the same amount of time, like I have to put myself forward that, like, you know, I've strived to be the best I can be. So yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I always hold myself to be the best at everything that I do, as long as I'm viable to have the credentials to back it up, you know.
You're right.
Like,
The merit.
Yeah, the merit, and as long as I can prove that I am the best, which I am, by the way.
Yes, sir.
At filming, just that. And then, you know, I would want someone to challenge me. I like a challenge, and at the end of the day, I'll still be able to talk to them on like the surface, you know. Like, I'm not gonna just sit here and be like, oh, I'm better than you. You can't work with me. No, like, I'll work with anybody, but a lot of people don't like that type of attitude of being the best, but it's like everybody in the game does it. Basketball players, rappers.
It's competition.
Yeah, it's
a competition.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as like a friendly competition with colleagues.
Yeah.
But I mean, Drake calls himself the best. Kanye calls himself the best. The Weeknd calls himself the best. All these best artists call themselves the best. So how like they can do it, so why can't I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, exactly.
So how do you handle the people who don't believe in you and try to bring you down?
Man, I think I'm glad that I'm at a better place in my life where I used to, you know, friends would give me like a negative review on one of my songs, and I would just try to do the most on like trying to convince them, like, well, what do you not like about it, you know? And sometimes they would just keep shitting on it, and they wouldn't give me a rhyme or reason as to why, you know, the songs were, you know, not good. And I think that's kind of like, you know, a lot of this stuff fuels me. I think I definitely have like that start mentality when, you know, people are, you know, overlooking me and I feel like an underdog. I think that's what really can bring about a lot of my like craziness when it comes to like, you know, making good music. So wait, say the question one more time, because I think I was getting off topic there.
No, you're good. It was, how do you handle the people who don't believe in you?
I think nowadays I think I try to block it out more so, because I know a lot of it when I was coming up, man, I definitely, as a young person that was putting themselves out there through music, and I think other people nowadays, like streamers and, you know, different people that are putting themselves out there, definitely can relate to that type of like just getting shitted on and people not believing in you, and it's people that are coming from that you grew up with, peers that you grew up with. And I think that was something, I'll give a quick story right quick, actually, if you don't mind.
No, go for it, bro. This is about you.
When I was 17, I had just put out maybe 3 or 4 songs on SoundCloud. And I got a phone call from somebody that said they were from Rostrum Records. I don't know if you've heard of
course. Wiz Khalifa,
Mac Miller back in like
2008.
Yeah.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, and I was just like, oh snap, like, you know, and they're like, man, we like your stuff. You should send them some more stuff. And I was like, bro, I just put out like 3 songs, like what? And then I could vividly remember hearing people like laughing in the background, you know, and that's kind of like, you know, and they were just like, oh, tell them this, and then I realized who was actually on the phone, you know, it was like somebody from my high school. And I think that's like something that like I didn't tell that story until I was like 10 years in, but yeah,
You're embarrassed.
Yeah, no, I think I was just like
Discouraged.
Yeah, I was just discouraged because I was like, you know, I was the only person from like high school actually like, you know, putting, you know, music out and things like that, and you know,
Yo, that's
I think
crazy.
you know, I think it just kind of fueled me to like, you know, want to do good because I know like how much energy and like light that I can transmit. So I think, you know, I have to like put that next to the darkness in me. I think that's something that I've had to learn because I think for so long like I would try not to acknowledge like the darkness that I had in myself, and I tried to be like on this light stuff, you know, just like on this positive stuff. But then I realized like, you know, in order to like receive all that light, you know, you're gonna have to tap into the dark.
Yeah,
so
there's no light without dark.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of like all that stuff fuels me, you know, and I feel like I won't give you. I think with artists too, it's good because you can take all that bullshit that happens around you, and then you can like fuel that, and then you transmute it through music. So that's kind of like, you know, if somebody like talks some crazy stuff to me, I could put something in a song. Like I really don't have to address them. I mean, Drake does it all the time, right?
Right.
You know, so I think that's kind of like, you know, I feel like that's where, you know, my superpower per se lies, where it's just like putting it into the music.
Yeah, I like that. That's crazy.
At the end of the day.
That's kind of funny, but
yeah.
It kind of puts you in a position of like, dang, they don't really believe in me. They're not taking me serious. And I've been in positions where I'm not taken serious, and it really puts you at a place where it's like, man, am I really going to make it?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, and then I remember just like, yeah, like I mentioned, I had people that were really just like, that I considered like friends, and they were like kind of shitting on my music without giving me like, I always like constructive feedback.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, if you tell me you don't like my song, what do you not like about it? What could be better?
Right.
And then people were just like, it's not good, man. I'm just like, you know, and then I had to really look at it, and I'm like, well, you know, you kind of had to look at them, and it was like, well, actually, they're not really doing the same things that you're doing in terms of like, they're not making music. Like they're not even pursuing a creative avenue to put themselves out there. So I feel like, you know, I just need to take that with a grain of salt, that maybe their response is a projection on maybe like them seeing me doing something, you know, could be the reason, could not be the reason. But, you know, and that's when I was like, all right, well, maybe I want to get actual opinions tailored to me from people that I actually, you know, respect, or like are doing the same avenues that I'm falling in. So like creatives per se, you know.
Yeah, someone in the same line of work as you, because you don't want to ever take advice from someone with a life you don't want to live.
Yes. So, and I didn't realize at the time, but I was like, oh, these are my friends, like, you know, and they weren't giving me any sort of, you know, constructive feedback.
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And that's kind of like exactly what it is, because, you know, people are going to hate on you whether they're your friends or not. I mean, they weren't really your friends, obviously. Dude, that's crazy. They said they were Rostrum Records.
Yeah, that was back in high school, man. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. I'm not trying to laugh, but that's
no. It's crazy. No, it's part of the story, man. Like, yeah, like I don't take that, like, you know. I think I used to take things a lot more personal, but then I was mentioning like how some of these people aren't doing these people were just saying those kind of things because they, like, you know, I'm a kid in high school, and they see like, oh, or that's my government name, like, oh, trying to like put out music now, like, what the, you know, let's fuck with them, you know.
I mean, that's kind of like a good joke. It made you realize, but like,
it was like, damn, I didn't. Yeah, I was like, damn.
It's kind of.
I remember that they said like somebody else told me like, yeah, we put that on in Mr. Machado's classroom today, bro. Because I think they like one of the teachers wanted to put it on, probably like trying to clown me too. But then they're like, oh, it actually like it was pretty straight, man. Like, yeah, like no, I think they're like, you know. When you do, I guess I've been always in the position of like putting myself out there. So I feel like I'm the one that, like, you know, can be in the glass box, because I've had like, you know, people look at me as opposed to me looking at people, you know, because the only people I look at are like people that I, you know, like listening to their music, like Kanye or Drake. So I think I've been in the position of like being in the glass box, and that's why, like, you know, it was interesting for me to see actually the people that are like shitting on me's perspective, you know.
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes total sense. So when you were first starting, what were some of the biggest failures that you had, and did they make you want to quit?
Okay. There was one point, I was probably 3 years in. I had not put out my first album, but I was in hopes of putting out my first album. but I had my first like show, like big show. And I remember I sold like 15, 16 tickets. And it was one of those like pay for play shows. So, you know, they want, you know, you're really not making any money off this, or you're making like $1 off each ticket, but you're doing it to bring a crowd. And, dude, that was like one of the longest nights of my life, man, because I had this girl that I liked at the time. She was on the album, and she was going to perform one of the songs with me. And I just remember getting there, and like, it was a little bit of a crowd, but I had brought the most people. And I just remember like, just kind of getting bullshitted, like, you know, getting hoed on like, you know, when I could perform.
Right.
So I had my mom there. I had my mom's friend came. I had maybe like 14 or 15 of my friends come. And it was definitely like one of the most disheartening places, because I was just like waiting line after like person after person. I was like going up to the promoter or whoever was putting on the event, like, yo man, I brought out like these amount of people, like, you know, they want to see me perform, like, you know, what's the hold up? And he's like, oh no, I'm gonna get to you, man, I'm gonna get to you on, you know, on some bullshit. And you know, I ended up performing, but I had my people out there at like 8:30, and I performed at like 12, you know, and the show was ending at like 1. So I was like towards the end. And it was funny because I actually went after what is it, like ICP? Like like it was like, they're not clowns, or like they're juggalos.
Yeah, juggalos. Yeah.
Yeah. I performed after a juggalo who had a song with Hobson though, which was pretty crazy. I had a CD.
My homie knows Hobson.
Crazy too. But yeah, I guess that was like the point. I was performing out there with juggalo, and it was, I got nothing against juggalos. It's a very interesting segue, but I think it was just the fact that I remember, like, I was telling the guy, the promoter, like, hey, I brought these people. These are the people I brought. And I'm, like, looking at the other side of the venue, and, like, I know that these other artists that are getting a chance to perform did not bring as many people. And it was just like, man, I was just like the you know, the grin wide, you know, the eyes big. You know, I was definitely naive. I think that's kind of like, you know, and I looked, you know, I kind of looked like a kid, but I was really a kid back then, you know. And I think, you know, people could, you know, mess with that because I look innocent. So I feel like people, you know, definitely played my naiveness and was like, oh, you know, we'll push them back, even though I clearly brought, you know, just as many people. So I remember that night, like, I performed. I remember I was just so happy to perform. I only got like 3 songs. You know, I was supposed to perform like for 20 minutes, and they just gave me 3 songs for time reasons. So it was like I got hoed on that. And I just remember after the show, I was like, bro, like, I want to quit, you know. And I think that was the thing. But I just remember the reception that my friends gave me, that they were so happy that I performed, that, you know, just wanted me to keep going, you know. There's definitely discouraging moments where you feel like you have opportunities, or you feel like you need these opportunities, and they don't, you know, they fall short. Or, you know, you feel like you put in your, you know, your all, and you fall short. And I've definitely had those moments because I've been doing it for 10 years. But I think at the end of the day, I'm just like, man, this is what I know how to do. And that's why I just keep, like, you know, coming back to it and keep wanting to make, you know, come back stronger. I mean, I just released a song today, you know, you know, it doesn't stop, you know, for me.
So how often do you release your music? Since you say you want to come back to it, what's keeping you from just like going all in?
That's a good question. Because I'm figuring out, you know, how to be able to make enough to where I could do it. I think that's a lot of that is like, if I could start seeing monetary reciprocation from it, because I feel like it's a hobby for me right now. I can make maybe $100 off a gig here, or, like, you know, do small stuff to make a little bit of money. But as of right now, I can't sustain, you know, money. But a lot of people in the industry also, you know, can't sustain their livelihoods as well.
I mean,
so
we know that.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, it's just like trying to figure out, you know, you're right. It's like, I definitely want to go all in, but I'm also like understanding, you know, how can music make me money? And the last couple of years, I've really been obsessed with like the music business, as opposed to just making music. Because as I mentioned before, like, the whole time I was just focused on making music, and I thought everything else was going to fall into place. But like, you really have to treat this like a business as well.
Right. So do you think that having a backup plan inhibits your ability to go all in? Because since you have a backup plan, you could kind of get comfortable and complacent knowing that you have something to fall back on.
No, I absolutely agree with you. You're right. I think it does inhibit me because, you know, I think what helps me, like, with the music is, like, you know, the heartbreaks that I go through, or, like, you know, the shortcomings that I've had in, like, you know, the music scene, or shortcomings I've had, you know, with family issues or things like that. That's what keeps me driving, like, creating music. So I feel like the music is always going to be something. Like making music is always going to be something I can do, but you're right about, having that backup plan that, like I really don't have like a great response to that, because you're right,
Right.
It's tough when you want to do a face dive, because you don't know what is on that other side.
Yeah, I kind of had to do the plunge.
Mm-hmm.
I saved up $5,000. I threw a dart at the map. It landed on Charlotte. I ended up here. But I don't have a plan B.
Okay.
So what's stopping you from just going all in? Why don't you just go all in like Russ? He's an independent artist. He dropped a song on SoundCloud weekly for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most successful independent rap artists to date.
Yeah, no, you're right, because it's like no, it's something that I've been like considering, like, man, if I just work this job for another few months, make some money, it's like, you're right, because at the end of the day, you're right, it's like, do I move to a bigger city, how there's a lot of unknown that I'm just like kind of like, well, if I just keep putting out music, then maybe if I see, or there's always like something like, well, if I can get my Spotify listeners up by like a couple more thousand, or more of a sign, a divine sign that says like, hey, you need to drop everything. And I feel like maybe you're right, that's where I need something to shake things up and be like, all right, well, if you say you're an artist, then
be an artist. So you're a pop, what is it called?
Pop rap.
Pop rap?
Yeah.
So with pop rap, that includes melodies, like melodic sounds.
Yeah. Like how Drake can, does his shit.
So with Drake, he doesn't normally have kind of repetitive stuff. I don't think any of his music sounds the same. Mm-hmm. It's always different, because normally when you have a pop rap style genre, a lot of the stuff becomes formulaic and forgettable. Mm. So how would you deal with someone forgetting your stuff, or like not really resonating with it, like because it's repetitive? How do you differentiate your different sounds and not make them repetitive?
I think for me, I'm really big on like the versatility of like pop rap. So to me, pop rapping is like singing and rapping. So I feel like, as opposed to a rapper that might just use like Lil Baby might just use like one flow, throughout the whole song, and like the same pitch, the same tone of voice. I definitely feel like a track to me is like a puzzle, where I'm able to like be like, all right, I want to use this cadence, or I want to use this flow in this section, and then I want to sing this certain part. I'm very much like, there's a lot I could do on the track, and like it's like a puzzle. So I'm just fitting different pieces and just trying to see what actually like encompasses it and fits it. So I think that's where I feel like I've been making music for 10 years. I probably have like 50, probably like 60, 70 songs released, on platforms. And like, I think if you hear a song of mine, you're like, okay, if you've heard my music before, you're like, oh, that's a Princeton song. He's just taking on a new type of, like, I'm not going crazy on different genres. I'm just taking like, my skill set and like putting it on a different sound. Like, and then every other song's like a little bit different, bit different. So I feel like that's how I can try to be from like someone that's stale or repetitive.
Yeah, because stale and repetitive does happen in the pop rap scene.
You're right, because once they find a formula, like the Baby, like once he found a formula, he just kept,
I don't like the Baby. It sounds the same.
He knew, man. But it gets old after a while. There's longevity in it.
That's how 6ix9ine was.
Yes.
Because he yells and it's the same thing, and it just gets old.
I think he tried to switch it up, but I think it just didn't.
It didn't work for him. I don't think so.
I think Russ is a great example, because he has he's got like an arsenal of like different cadences, flows, and like how he goes about the music, and the different styles, huh?
He's kind of pop.
Yeah. He has different styles too, and I think he packages in a way that, he's still around, like 10 years in the mainstream, or like probably close to 10 years.
Yeah, because he just popped out of nowhere with that "What They Want" song.
What they want.
Yeah, that was.
You remember that song? You remember? Yeah. We were like in early 20s
like
for that.
2016. You were in your early 20s, not me.
Yeah.
I don't know how old I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was when he popped, because that was like 2016, 2017, and then he's still been making waves.
I saw him on like an MTV University, like they had like an MTV channel, and that music video was on there.
Yeah, I remember. He was like in the coat and stuff. Yeah. Russ is cool. I would like to interview him.
But he's got a lot of different like styles on how he goes on
and
the
he can
track.
rap.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think I think about Drake's longevity, man. Like, the reason why Drake has been, this long is that he, you don't know what he puts, like the perfect cadence or flow, he has like a bag. He's like has a bag that he's able to like, I want to use this right now. Like, he knows exactly when he hears like beats, like he's like, okay, this is the type of flow I want. This is the type of pitch that I'm gonna sing in, And Russ is one of those artists too that knows. I think Tory Lanez is also someone that
I don't know
with
so
the
much about
terms
Tory
of
Lanez.
the versatility, you know. Because I think just I wouldn't say I'm the best singer, but I can carry a tune. So I think I just know that helps me cast a wider net and reach out and resonate with more people, have a poppier sound.
What are some of the biggest compliments that you get from people regarding your music?
I would say probably that I'm not like a carbon copy of anyone else. Like I would list like Drake and Kanye as an influence, but if somebody hears my work, they're not like, oh, you sound like Drake, or you sound like Kanye. It's like I've definitely gotten complimented just by like using influences, but not sounding like anybody else. I feel like that's something that's like the biggest compliment to me. Or like someone says like, I really like this small detail that you put in this song, because me and Eskimo work like diligent. I'm very like diligent on like making sure like every single sound, or like if we can put like a little cool effect that maybe like 5% of the listening audience will hear. Like I'm very like because I like listening to that stuff. I think Travis Scott is like one of the best when it comes to like certain effects in certain areas.
You think so?
Yeah,
I don't like Travis Scott.
I think just the amount of detail that he has in like with his ad libs and stuff like that. I think he does a great job in that.
Migos have good ad libs.
Migos have great ad libs, and they put great touches on their shit too. So I really like when people are like, oh, I actually like this one certain particular spot. Like I really appreciate when you did that. I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, yes, it'd be like that sometimes. They'll like, oh, I like what you did here. I like what you did here.
Because it takes me back to when I was in the studio, like actually like making sure like that one little note or something like that, put that effect on there. So.
Yeah, like when I'm editing and someone's like, oh, I like what you did here. I just remember how I made it.
Exactly.
So what do you do when people call you someone who follows the trends instead of creating them? Because you say you like to go off and do your own thing, but in this day and age it's difficult to do your own thing and be original. So how do you
it's tough to be like an artist of influence, because there's the influence is like what's hot right now. Like people are going to be on that LeAngelo Ball. People are going to try to make 2000s music now because LeAngelo Ball put out a hot song that's 2000 music. So I don't know, it's just like I feel like a mantra I live, or something that I live by is just like I think if somebody has me figured out, like I'm always go left field, because it's like the saying like never let them know your next move. But I really feel like if somebody has me figured out, like I'm always gonna be able to make a sharp left turn, because like I know exactly like the type of person that I can be, and how I can adapt to certain situations. So I don't think anyone like can put me in a box, because I never felt like I was in a box. Like I said, like back going in high school, like I didn't feel like I was a jock or a nerd, or like I was a mixed race kid. So I never felt like I could be categorized into a box. But everyone tried to put me in a box, but there's obviously different places I could tap into that other people can't. So
so is Neskimo your primary engineer and producer?
Yes, he is.
Why do you choose him above other people?
It's probably because we're Peruvian. But I would say, I don't know. I think when we found each other, this was like 4 years ago when we found each other. I don't know. I just I guess I've been making music. I've made music for a while, but like I mentioned, I don't know some of the terminology, like when it comes to like the mixing effects. So I remember just like kind of like we worked on a song, and I would just like give him ideas, and it was like he literally took those ideas and like exactly what I was thinking, even though I didn't know how to phrase it like in a actual term, like great terminology, like related to the music. He was able to like put it to like how I envisioned it, and like he was able to use like the effects that I was like, oh yeah, I wanted that effect, I just didn't know the name of it. But all those little things ended up like adding up to where it was like, oh, he's getting my sound to where like I think this is great, like this is how I envision myself sounding as the finished product. And I think he just took it to that point. So I think that's who I like to work with, that like that pick up where I can't leave off, because I don't have expertise in certain areas, and they exactly like know the ideas that I want to create, and they can just take it and like transmute that.
So why don't you try and learn more about the holes that you need to fill?
That's true, actually. I would say when it comes to like the audio aspect, the technical aspect, I feel like where I've mentioned before, like where I'm best at is the writing, the songwriting aspect. So, have you ever heard of something called the Goldilocks rule?
I have not.
Where it's like your peak motivation lies within a task that is like relatively like accomplishable or doable. So I think like with writing, that's naturally like something that I'm good at, that I feel like I'm strong at. That's like one of my strengths, So I feel like, when it comes to writing music, it's challenging to a degree, but it's not the most challenging thing to me. It's just going to take me some time, but I know I can write like a really well-written song. It's just going to take me maybe a couple hours, maybe a month, it just depends how I go about it. But, I think with the audio engineering, you're right. It can be learned, something that can be learned, or,
at least a little bit to know.
At least a little bit of knowledge. So I think that's something that, when it comes to video editing, now I've been messing around with CapCut a lot just because like I'm my own artist. So
yeah,
you're right. You have to. You're right. Probably a beginner.
No.
Not Da Vinci.
No, Da Vinci. I can talk about softwares all day, but it's just funny because today I was like trying to use CapCut, and I don't use CapCut.
Yeah, exactly. So you were probably trying to navigate around that.
Yeah, I was like asking the team I was with. I was like, "Yo, how do I do this?" They're like, "You're the editor, bro."
You're like, "I don't know how to go about this."
I don't know about CapCut.
It's a different interface.
Yeah,
probably.
it's just different because it's like it's
made for people that aren't.
It's beginners, so it's with Final Cut.
Made for novices.
It's novice, so it's really rudimental. So yeah. I didn't really know how to do something super simple. And I figured it out.
You're like,
But
I think
I went to film school, so like it's a lot different. So when I studied the theory of cameras and the theory of editing, it makes more sense, and it allows me to express myself differently because I know all the interfaces, I know the softwares, the nonlinear programs, so I can do anything, So that's why I was wondering if you think it would benefit you more to learn about it.
I think
so this way.
Yeah. I think just in general to be able to, like you said, like to know exactly what I'm looking for, like, if I have to do it myself or if I can like, ask an expert that knows how to do certain tasks, just to be able to be able to express myself in order to like, at the end of the day, get the job done or, whatever effects that I want or how I want it to sound, that I can express myself in an actual, linear way to this person.
When was the last time you seriously doubted yourself? And how did you handle it?
Dang. I would say it's probably a couple of years ago. It definitely is that. And it's just like not even on a music level, just on a what the fuck am I doing in my life level. And I was working at a couple different jobs and just like nothing kind of stuck. And I was doing like music bingo and trying to get like a marketing job, and definitely just things were not like working because I was accustomed to a level of comfort. I was still living at my parents' place, and I kind of set my life up where like I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I was just like enjoying my life and getting by like with the money that I was making because I was like didn't have crazy expenses. And it was just like, man, the jobs that I did had, and I thought I was gonna step into bigger jobs, and then everything just kind of cut me off at the knees. I remember I was doing couponing for cigarettes. So I was going to like bars and at night and just like trying to get people to want to, like if you smoke, hey, I get you a coupon, get a vape for like $3 or, get $2.50 off of a pack of natural American Spirit.
So you're advocating for poor health choices?
No. Well, I remember just being in the interview. I was like, I don't smoke, and they're like, no, don't worry, we'll teach you. I was like, to smoke, and they're like, no, how to give coupons. And I was
so you're advocating for poor health choices.
They were paying like $27.50 an hour, so I think that's probably why I. But then I was like, okay, I can get this gig, and like I can try to find a marketing gig. And at that time, like I'd also gotten out of a relationship as well, so I was like, man, like. The level of comfort that I had in my life, is kind of like everything's starting to be friction, because you're right. I want certain things, from my life. I want to see success. I'm an artist and I'm trying to, get, be in a better place than I am right now. And like, but I wasn't willing to do any of the work, and I think that's kind of where like, I think some of the biggest things that helped me reach a better level was like time management skills. I ended up going to therapy. I ended up reading, I think Think and Grow Rich. I think that was a book that I read, and then just kind of going down that self-improvement dive. I think that's kind of what, because I think, when you go through like that heartbreak and you go through like, you just have to get humbled in terms of like, your jobs are not cutting, everything's, I mean,
I feel you.
I mean, no, it felt like I was humbled because, you know, I had my life set up a certain way, and then, you know, God was telling me, like, you know, if you want to see results, you know, if you say you want these things, then, like, you know, we're gonna shake things up, you know. So everything just kind of happened to, you know, change for me, and I really wasn't accustomed to change, and I was afraid of the unknown, and I think that's kind of like where I doubted myself as like an artist and just as a person, and those like 6 months, like living at home, like, you know, I was doing the thing was the coupons, man, like it was a great job. I was paying $27.50, and I was like, and then they ended up like cutting that program too, and I was like, you know, I was like, damn, back to square one. And I just remember like trying to figure out, like I felt like my back was against the wall, and I was finding gigs where like I did like a 30-second commercial spot for 9 Round because it was the gym that I went to, and I was just trying to get into content, and I was like talking to the owner of it, and he would, you know, pay me $300. And it was just very much like, it was like go time, like a switch had been flipped in my head of like, none of this is gonna happen if you just sit here and like, if you wake up and you are on social media for like 2 hours in the morning. So that was actually at the time that I got a 9 Round membership, and I started going to the gym like almost every day because I wasn't working. So I was just like, all right, I need to put my body through something. And that was something that really like advocated for me to like, you know, want to change my life around, was just like working out mentally, physically, spiritually, like all those things like just played a role into like helping my time management skills. Because now I feel like I have a full-time job now, but I'm putting out more music than I did when I didn't have a full-time job. So, and it's just all based on like, you know, how much you really want it and how much time you can advocate for everything.
Right.
So that's kind of, you know, how I see, you know, that's where I doubted myself like 2 years ago. And I feel like since I've been able to pull myself up from that was like December 2022. So, you know.
You came up, you just...
Yeah. And I feel like since then, it's like, all right, I feel like I've actually been able to come to my own, you know, and be like, all right, this is where you grow up. Because, you know, you see those TikToks where like, you know, like you don't become a man until like you experience heartbreak, you have no money in your account, or like, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was like, no one is going to come save you. I think that was the biggest like realization that like, you know, because I had been under the blanket statement like, well, I'm still living with my parents and like, you know, things are going okay. And like, you know, I just wasn't shook to where like, you know, no one is going to come save you.
Yeah, it got super real for me when my first day in Charlotte without anything, because my mom came with me. She drove across the country.
Nice.
But the second she flew out, it
That's
was
funny.
like, yo, this is real. I
by
was
yourself.
scared, right? I didn't know.
You really threw a dart on a map.
Yeah.
Damn, that's great. That's a story right there.
You know, it's I didn't have no friends, no family, nothing. Like my closest relative is 2,000 miles away.
Wow.
To this day. So you know, it wasn't something that I could just like pack up and go back home.
Yeah.
Because it's 2,500 miles away. You know, like I
You're
moved
like, I
across
have
the
to-
country.
yeah.
Like I have to.
You
do
made
this.
a permanent decision that
I
you
made
gotta
a
stick
permanent
out.
decision.
You know?
I only had $5,000 in my name. Like, so you know, it was scary.
Yeah.
So something like that is just you just kind of have to get it done. Like
Yeah.
I had no plan. It was just I'm gonna do it. So that kind of resonate with your you know, like you get down to like the bottom where you go through a heartbreak, you have no money in your account, you know, trauma builds a man,
Yeah.
you know, it makes him a warrior.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And it was like, because I came from where, like, you know, I grew up middle class. So it was like, I didn't, you know, come for nothing per se. Like, you know, I had like a little bit of stability. It just wasn't stability for me to get to that next level in my career or in like music, you know, because, you know, a lot of people become complacent, like you mentioned, you know, whether they work middle class, like they're not striving for something that's like greater than, you know, everything that's around them. And I think that's something that was like, well, you have these, like I had these aspirations of like striving for something that's like bigger than me, but then I wasn't, you know, I was still living at home and not putting, you know, certain things into place and like not getting any motion really.
You can still live at home and do it. That's like the best time too. You know, like if I had the financial backing, it would be a different story. Different story.
Yeah. I think for me though, I needed that, you know, to be able to feel like, you know, the urgency was in me, because I feel like, you know, I came from that place of complacency.
Yeah, because you are forced to have a sense of urgency at that time. Because if I don't film something, I don't pay rent. You know, like I do this full time. Like I don't have a job. I don't have nothing. Like I've been doing this full time, and when I do the full time grind, it's difficult sometimes. So with your
you're
doubt.
right.
Yeah.
Well, because for
have a
you,
lot
it's
of
like
doubts.
you can't. Yeah, you can't stop. Like you can't turn this stuff off because you have to keep going. Because like you said, like the money at the end of the day is like that you gotta make your money. So you can't just like turn it off and on.
Right.
Because like sometimes you gotta do stuff that when you don't want to do stuff.
Yeah, you have to do stuff. It's discipline.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're hard on yourself or not hard enough?
I always feel like I'm not hard enough, but I think I'd say compared to most people, I would say I'm definitely hard on myself just because, as we mentioned before, there's obviously like certain goals and certain ways that I want to see how I, come up in the world that I want to make true, like certain aspirations or certain dreams I have. So I'm always like, all right, what can I be doing? And I think for a lot of times I had a lot of indecision in me. So, before this whole awakening that I had a couple years ago, I had a lot of indecision where like, I'd be like, well, I want this, but like, what if they say no? Or like, it's like, I know I'm capable of doing these things, but if I don't actually put the effort forth, then like, you know what? I just kind of let things kind of slide, or I'd kind of go half-ass on it. Slide. And I think that's where,
Travis Scott says, I should have slid, or I let it slide when I really should have slid.
Yeah. And I think that indecision, I think when you're capable of those things and you're indecisive, it's like somebody else is getting those opportunities that like maybe not be as talented or maybe not have the aptitude or the intelligence to like, do it. But the fact is they're not second guessing themselves. They're not overthinking it. They're just doing it. They're not being indecisive. And I think that was the thing where it was like, what's the worst that can happen? Something fails. You fail. It's opportunities get said no, but at least you apply. Like, certain things like I wouldn't even like apply because it was like, I was like, I don't know if I should do it or not. And it was just like, if you keep being indecisive about it, then like, somebody else is going to get that opportunity, whether you applied for it or not.
Right.
And I think that's something that like really like, well, what I'm going to just see what's the worst that could happen. Maybe I lose a couple bucks on something or like, or you fail or something doesn't come to fruition that you wanted it to. And I think that was the thing where like I got to find out at least. Because I think some people that are like smart and overthink, they'll just get in their own head and that and they become like neurotic about it and they won't do a thing about it, about like trying to achieve certain goals. So they kind of dies right there. Right. So I feel like it was like, all right, well, let me just see it through. And then if it doesn't work out, then it didn't work. It wasn't meant to be.
Then it wasn't meant to be.
But if it does, then all right.
Then we did the right thing.
Exactly.
How? I didn't mean to say how. What are you gonna do if your music doesn't evolve?
Whew. Man, that's crazy. Because I thought I was like, man, by the time like I'm 30, like I gotta like quit this. And it's like, man, I'm it's coming up sooner than later. So I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, whenever I want to walk away from music, it has to be in my mind where, I've done what I can do, because you see certain artists. I mean, I think certain artists have been in the game for like 20 years. Like they're still putting out music, but nobody's checking for it. But they're still putting out music, maybe because they love it, maybe because they need to make money. It doesn't matter. But I think, for me to say that if I have to walk away, I'll do it on my own terms because, I actually feel like I can't contribute or provide anything of substance or of, value to making music anymore. Right now that I'm not at that point. And I think I got like another 10 years where I can, keep, putting my best foot forward. But I think once I can't, then, I'm willing to, walk away, And,
No, that makes sense.
But as of right now, I definitely feel like motivated more than ever. So.
What about some future projects coming out? What are you working on? What do you got in the works?
I let's see. I think I'm gonna keep dropping singles, but I want to have an EP and then I want to have an album after that. But I think the how Russ breaks it down is, for artists that's not as big as like some of these mainstream artists, singles are the way to go. So I think I'll put out some singles, and then I feel like if one single's really performing well, then I might package like a 3-4 song EP on that. And then I definitely want to drop an album though at either this year or next year. Maybe a 10 song, because I probably want to go 15, but it's like sometimes you don't want to
grind.
Exactly. You don't want to put out a 15 song project and then people listen to 2 songs. So maybe if you build like some momentum, put out some singles, and maybe it's like, all right, maybe I'll put an 8 song album or a 10 song album. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely like going away on how to package some of these things. So
for the next 10 years, you're saying you're going to put your all in and go as hard as you can for the next 10 years. So what do you think people are going to say in those 10 years? Do you think they're going to call you a rising star, a star, or what could have been?
Oh, a star. Yeah, like, oh, he did it. I think that's like, oh, we didn't see the vision the first 10 years, but then he came the last 10 years, you know. They talk about the overnight success, you know. That it takes, you know, 10 years to make an overnight success. And I'm like, damn, you know. Once you start seeing these artists come up, you're like, oh, actually, they did do their homework. They were actually putting songs out in 2015, 2016. You know, and that was roughly around the same time I was, like, putting out my first song. So, you know, it's one of those things where it just, you know, some of these artists that get hot, you know, right away, they come out of obscurity. You know, maybe they made music for 1 year or 2 years. Lil Xan, you know, you see how hard his fall is just because, you know, it wasn't he wasn't built to last. Like, it wasn't meant for that just because, you know, he came up, you know, so quick. You know, I think, I've been able to take my time. I think Russ is another example where, like, he took his time. You know, he really perfected his craft, and then bam, that's where the longevity comes in.
What are you going to do if you lose everything tomorrow? How would you start over?
I think if I lost everything tomorrow, I'm looking at this one right now because I'm just like, yeah, that's a tough question. Just because I think really, like, I don't know. Somebody said I'm resilient, so I feel like at the end of the day, you know, even though I definitely came from a place of, like, you know, middle class, I definitely have resiliency and, like, wanting to prove myself. So if I lost everything, like, you know, I'm working, I gotta find a job, you know, ASAP, you know, washing dishes. That was one of my first jobs, like washing dishes and, like, you know, being able to pick myself back up because I know, like, the skill set and the talents I have. So, you know, if I lost everything, you know, I'm right back to work to, like, how can I get it? You know, how can I make something happen from nothing? So.
No, I like that. Get straight to work, you know? Resilience. Man. A lot of people like that.
Yeah, we only have, like, one, you know, I feel like this is all cliche stuff. Like, we only have one life to live. We do have one life to live, but, you know, I think, you know, I'm definitely, like, you know, motivated. I think that's kind of the word that I've been just
like
really
that word.
You don't like motivation? No. You don't like manifesting? No,
I mean, it's different. Motivation just lacks action.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like it.
So then what would you call, like, the term then that you...
Discipline.
Okay.
Because you just do it. Discipline is action.
Motivation is like you're talking about it. You're talking about it. Then
I'll
you have the discipline to follow through. I think that's kind of like the follow through is where, you know, I'm definitely glad that I'm at this point in my life. So, yeah.
I feel you. But you feel good about today?
Yeah, this is good, man.
I'm going to go ahead and conclude.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have anything to say?
No, man. This is fun, man. Shout out to Bean. Shout out to Docs. Shout out to Eskimo. We had a great time.
And if y'all would like to see anyone you admire or aspire to be like, let me know in the comments below. I'll get a hold of anybody that you want. I will put them on my pod. This is the most versatile podcast in the world, the Bean Dip. And thank you so much, Princeton, from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Coming live from Charlotte, baby. Neon next, baby.
Yeah. I'll grab him. I got him.